Jamie, did you figure out how to get the right answer?
No.
Still off by a little bit? Okay.
Yeah.
We'll go over it right now. All right, so let's see what we did here. So what we know is we have a piece of machinery that costs $415,000, and we're going to straight line depreciate it over 5 years. So depreciation each year is, I'm looking at the wrong problem. All right, somebody tell me depreciation. 83,000, is that right? 83, yeah. So our annual depreciation is 1/5 of the 415,000, or 83,000. But even though we fully depreciate it, we're going to have a salvage value at the end of 50,000, so we're going to have to pay taxes on that. So we need to calculate an after-tax salvage value. We're going to save salaries, and I was telling Julia, this is one of these conventions this book does that is supposed to make it easier for you, and I think it just makes it confusing. So it's essentially revenues less costs lead to cost savings of 120,000. They're trying to make it easier. I would rather they give you a revenue number and a sales and a cost number, but they don't. So we have saved salaries of 120,000. Now, we're going to save salaries, but we're also going to be able to, if somebody turn off, I think Gladys, your microphone's on. We're going to be able to save on working capital initially as well. So what we're going to be able to do is we have to spend $415,000 for this machine, which is a cash outflow, but we're going to reduce our need for working capital. So in other words, we're not going to have to buy inventories and such. So that's going to offset that cost of net working capital a little bit. So the working capital is an inflow, whereas the new machine is an outflow. So we spend $415,000, but we save $80,000 initially. So that's going to impact our initial outflow. If we're going to reduce our working capital initially, so that's our inflow, and the last year we're going to have an outflow of that $80,000. So they always balance each other out by the end. Our tax rate's 34%. We require 9% rate of return. Depreciation is straight line, and in this one we are calculating, they don't tell us, they just tell us a discount rate, so they typically want an NPV, and that's what they're looking for in this one. Okay, so our initial outflow is the spend $415,000 but save $80,000 on working capital. So our entire initial outflow in year 0 is $335,000. So we save $120,000 in salaries. In addition, we have depreciation of $83,000 to get to our EBIT of $37,000. We have taxes of 34%, so our taxes are $12,580 to get to net income of $24,420. Our operating cash flow is the EBIT of $37,000 plus the depreciation of $83,000 minus our taxes of $12,580. So we have operating cash flow of $107,420. So what we know so far is in year 0, our cash flow is $335,000. In years 1, 2, 3, and 4, it's a 5-year project. Yeah, years 1, 2, 3, and 4, our cash flow is $107,420. Now we have to look at year 5. So year 5 cash flow is $107,420. Plus we have to reduce that by this $80,000 that was an initial outflow, that was an initial inflow. Now it's going to be an outflow, so we're going to reduce that $107,000 by this $80,000. But we have the advantage of a salvage value. So the salvage is the $50,000 inflow we receive less the 34% tax, or $17,000 we pay in taxes. So we have an inflow of $33,000. So for each year in the project, you have to look at the 3 different cash flows. Are there operating cash flows? Is there any investment changes, and are there any working capital changes? The initial outflow, typically there's an investment change. Often there's a working capital change. There's never an operating cash flow. Years 1, 2, 3, and 4, there's always an operating cash flow. Sometimes you have an additional investment in the asset, but not usually. But often you have an additional investment in working capital, but not in this case. And then in the last year, you very frequently have all 3 cash flows. You have an operating cash flow, you often have some kind of salvage value, and you typically have a working capital recovery. All right, so if you just keep those 3 cash flows in mind, it makes it a little bit easier to think about on an annual basis. So when we get there, our cash flows are $335,000 initially, the 107,420 operating cash flows in years 1 through 4. And then in year 5, we had the operating cash flow, 107,000. We have the salvage value that we got of 34, I think it was 33,000. And then we had the outflow of recovering that working capital of 80,000. So our year 5 cash flow is 60,420. When we compute our NPV, given our discount rate is 9%, we calculated an NPV of 52,279. Okay, what part do you want me to cover again, or all of it? Where do you have questions? Kate, I know you popped out. Where do you have a question?
I think I'm following now.
You got it?
Just is this PowerPoint on your Moodle, just so I can go back?
Of course, yeah. I'm going to post the recording, and I'll post the PowerPoint as well.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. Jamie, you good?
I have everything except the MPV.
Oh, okay. So you have all the numbers, you just haven't calculated the NPV yet?
Yeah.
Yay, that's very good. Okay, the cash flows are the key here. Now you probably are starting to get a sense why I paid attention to inflows and outflows with cash flows. It really starts to matter here because it can play with your brain when you've got these 80,000. Is that an inflow or an outflow? What exactly does it mean? And learning that early on helps these cash flows look a little bit more logical anyway. Colin, you good?
Yeah, I think the one part that I had messed up was the 80,000. Just because of the signs, I had the 415. Like I knew it subtracted from the 415, but then I was adding it to the 33,000 at the end there.
Yeah, I actually appreciate the fact that the book does a lot of these problems where you're saving in working capital. The reality is most of the world's problems are you spend more working capital initially, you build up working capital every year, and then you recover a whole bunch of working capital later on. That's the most standard. It's an outflow, typically outflows each year, and then recover a whole bunch at the end. But in this case, they reverse it, and it's better to practice it here than on an exam for the first time. So that's why they do it this way. Everybody else okay with this problem? Feeling pretty okay? Okay, we're not going to do this next problem. I'm going to send it to you guys later on, but I'm going to show it to you now in case you want to take a snap of it. It's 2 pages. This is as hard as these cash flows get. This is almost as hard as what you do within a company working on cash flows. And so I want you to practice one of these, and I'm going to have you do this at home. And next week when we come back together, we're going to do Euroland first. We're going to do the simulation. Then I'll go over this problem. Then I may talk a little bit about the weighted average cost of capital project, maybe. And then we're going to do chapter 8. So next time's really about chapter 8, which is not a very difficult chapter, but I want you to be able to think about this one a little bit. And so let's talk through it a bit. So in this case, we have sales that vary each year. Okay, so we're going to spend 1.5 million in working capital to start. And then every year our working capital is going to be 15% of that year's sales. So look what's going to happen. We have to spend on working capital initially, and then between years 1 and 2, our working capital is going to increase again. It's going to be 15% of that difference between the sales in years 1 and 2. So it's going to be 15% of that $8,000 increase. Between years 2 and 3, it's going to increase again. So we're going to have outflows in year 2. We're going to have outflow in year 3. But between year 3 and 4, the sales decrease. So we're going to have some working capital inflow. We're going to have more working capital inflow between years 4 and 5. And then we sum up all of the working capital and recover all of it in year 5. That's a little bit more complex. Okay, so your working capital is going to be a little bit harder. Let's see. So working capital, fixed costs are going to be $1.85 million per year. Sales are going to be $190 per unit, and the units are selling for $345. So we got to figure out your revenues. $190 per unit times the price of $345. Oh, hold on. I just messed that up completely. I wasn't reading it properly. Okay. Our sales are $345 times the number of units. Our variable costs are $190 times the number of units. So our sales are going to change each year, which means our operating cash flows are going to change each year. Our initial cost for our equipment is $19.5 million. Okay. Now, we're also going to do an accelerated depreciation schedule. So snap this picture too. This is your depreciation schedule. Depreciation is going to change each year. That's going to make your operating cash flows different every single year. The other component that's important here, let's see. Okay, so we're going to depreciate it over 5 years. It's going to be fully depreciated. But at the end of the life, we're still going to expect we're going to have 20% of the initial cost that we're going to get in a salvage value. If it's fully depreciated, that 20%, we're going to have to look at it after tax basis. Tax rate's 35%. Required return is 18%, and I want you to calculate an NPV and an IRR. All right, so this is a complex project, problem, and the confidence that you'll have if you can do this one successfully will be huge. And so once you start digging into this, especially when you start looking at some of those working capital numbers, if you have any questions this week, let me know so that we can get you as close to the right answer when we go over it in class next time. So sales vary each year. We have a fixed sales price per unit, but our sales numbers vary. The hardest part about this one is really the fact, there's two things. You have to calculate a different operating cash flow each year. That's not very hard because you guys know how to build pro forma statements. The hardest part is going to be your working capital number. You spend on working capital initially, and then you have incremental working capital that's going to increase or outflows for a couple of years. Then you have some inflows of working capital. Then you have to sum up all the difference in the last year and recover all of the working capital you've expended in the last year of the project. That's probably the hardest piece of it. Okay, so this is the problem I want you to work on at home. So what we have for next time is do your Euroland, and by 9 a.m. on next Tuesday, submit your Euroland written project. Come to class ready to do the simulation for Euroland. Then we'll go over this problem. Then we'll talk about Chapter 8. Everybody good on where we're headed? Okay, that's it for today. Thanks a lot for participating today. I really appreciate you guys showing up and working through these problems with me and with your classmates. Have a great week. I'll see you in class next Tuesday. And pay attention to the elections tonight. It's going to be quite a night. Bye, guys.